So we're in Clovis, California. We just finished installing a Rinnai RL75E, and this is the propane version, so EP. And this is an existing recessed wall box done at remodel about 10 years back. And the old water heater was the R75LS. That's the cover sitting off it, and the water heater's over there on the truck. So when we got out here, this was hard piped in. The blue and the red, so that's cold water and hot water coming in. They just had the old isolation valves on, and we showed the homeowner when they got home. They'd pipe straight in, and typically that's fine if that's rigid pipe coming through and it's straight, like copper, iron pipe, brass, anything that supports itself and then in turn supports the valve. That would be fine. But the only way to shut off this equipment, you can shut it off there unless something goes wrong with this valve, and then you've got to shut the this portion of the building down, so you'll lose water. And I'm not sure what all it feeds, but it's right around the back side of this wall, right around the corner. There's a 1-inch line, and it feeds this water heater. So a lot of guys are just putting them in just like that. Our house, there's not a separate shutoff valve, but it's copper coming out of the wall. It's hard piped up, and it's rigid, which means you can shut the valve off, take the unit out, do what you need to do. Plus, the old valve, and the homeowner told me this, was the Webstone isolation valve kit that was in there, and it was real hard to operate and probably getting ready to break. We've tried to utilize those during flush and snapped off that handle, so it's just good to get them out of there. What we did, we let the homeowner know we'd like to get you a full shutoff valve. Now, these are shark bite fittings down below. It's BPEX coming through, and so these are UPC rated, which is Uniform Plumbing Code. So those are code, and it just adapts to the BPEX and then gets us some threads. Same thing over here, adapts to the BPEX, gets you some threads, and then one valve, cold water. So as you can see, this guy, if you ever need to shut it off, just be gentle with this stuff, because you can see the movement here back and forth. That's because you've got PEX coming through the box. Not my first choice. Like I say, I would have gone copper all the way through the box, down here, strapped it in the wall, stood it up, and so now everything's nice and rigid, but it's not. You can see hot lines moving back and forth, cold lines moving. There's nothing we can do about that unless you want us to open the wall. We can certainly do something there, but just be gentle with this valve. It does pivot a little bit, you can see, because these are shark bite fittings. These will spin, and so you don't need to use this valve at all, this cold water shutoff valve, and unless something happens up here and it's flooding or whatever, you can shut it off right here. So it's just a 1/4 turn valve, and it just shuts off just like that, and then the water's off to the unit, and then of course comes back on. And like I say, this will spin a little bit. Falcon stainless steel connectors, and then of course brass nipples in between. So solid brass valve, brass nipple, stainless steel connector that kind of loops around and back into your brand new flush kit. So this comes with the unit. It's Rinnai, made by Matsui, and we're going to send you a video that shows you how to flush this. And so that's installed on the cold side. Hot side's installed, same thing, kind of loops around just down to adapter, no valve required. And then of course CPVC for the relief line that goes through the bottom of your recessed wall box and sits down here on the wall. And so that guy's good. Everything in here looks good. We've checked it for leaks. Monitor this occasionally. When you come out to flush this, just check in this box. Make sure you got no water in here. Because you got several points of connection. Up here, that's just a rubber gasket that seals there on the hot and the cold. And then of course down here, that's threaded in with piped open Teflon tape. And then of course here, this is a gasket. And then of course, that's a gasket. So just lots of points of connection in here. But everything right now is dry. The water heater is on, it's wired back in. You may have to adjust your temperature on your controller, which is probably in your laundry room or somewhere like that. Adjust it back up to 120. But we've fired this and the unit works great. We did have to modify your cover. It's a little short on this side, so it was hitting that edge of the exhaust from the water heater, and then it was a little too tall. It was up about here, so we had to cut out the bottom, cut some nice corners, and then we filed it and sanded it. You can see I'm running my finger along it right now, so it's pretty smooth, but just be careful with that. Anytime you got sharp metal corners, you need to be careful. And so that looks good. We'll get a piece of sandpaper and sand a little bit more. Anyways, everything here looks good. Outside of that, this installation is done.